Hey everybody, what's up? This is another one of my exposed episodes, and I thought this was going to get a little bit easier, but it's actually getting worse. I am so nervous right now, but I'm just going to go ahead and do this. So the reason that I'm doing this video is because a few months ago, I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. I'm really just, this is a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be. So the reason that I'm doing this is because a few months ago, somebody messaged me and they said that they had just attempted suicide and got out of a mental facility and was looking for something online to help them because they just couldn't continue on the way that they had been before. And this person actually hid from his friends and his family that he had been hospitalized for a suicide attempt. So he said, I'm left to pick up the pieces on my own, I feel, and I just need help. Do you think reality transurfing can help me? So I told him my opinion that yes, absolutely, reality transurfing can help you. It's helped me, and this email that I received from this person is the inspiration for this video. So right now, I am sitting in the parking lot of a mental health facility in my hometown where I was admitted 3 different times. The first time when I was 14 years old, the second time when I was 19 years old, and the third time when I was 23 years old. This was an overnight facility, so I was admitted here one time against my will, and the other times I came voluntarily, but I would probably have been admitted against my will if I had not come voluntarily. So I'm going to tell my story a little bit of what happened exactly and why I came here. So if you watched my last video about my upbringing, and I'm sorry again, Mom and Dad, I know this shit is really, really painful for you guys to hear if you are watching this video. I do not mean to throw us under the bus or drudge up stuff from the past, but I'm doing this for the people that are out there that are struggling right now and feel like they're alone. So again, I'm sorry if this upsets you guys. I grew up in an environment where I felt ignored as a human being. I felt like I didn't have anybody that cared about me. I felt like my parents were just trying to constantly get rid of me. They would drop me off places, a group home in town, my uncle who was a psychologist, they'd take me up to my grandparents. I was just sort of, I want to say, an inconvenience, and I was not nurtured in any of the ways that I feel now, looking back in retrospect, children should be nurtured. I felt like I was an inconvenience. I felt like I was ignored. And quite simply, by the age of 14 years old, I had had it with life. I was suicidal. I had a boyfriend in high school that was also in a pretty dysfunctional family situation, and one day the two of us decided to take a bunch of drugs and we were going to end it. So that's what, wound me up here the first time. I can't remember what exactly transpired, but my parents got involved and they sent me here to this facility, and after that, I think I stayed maybe about a week here, and after that, I was shuffled off to a drug rehab facility down in Northern California where I stayed for a month. My mindset was, pretty much just I had nothing to lose. I had nothing to look forward to. I felt that I didn't have any proper guidance. I felt that I didn't have an adult that cared about me. And I was to the point where I would pretty much just take any drug that I could get my hands on because I was so desperate to escape reality. Really, it was that bad. I was desperate. I was feral. I was like a wild animal. I had no self-respect. I had no care for myself. I just wanted it to be over. Now you can imagine coming to that point at 14 years old. It was pretty extreme. So after I got out of the rehab facility, God, it's so hard to talk about this shit because of the stigma that surrounds all this stuff. And I'm just trusting my heart on this one, guys, that this is the right thing to do. This video really is for anyone that's struggling with any of this stuff or anyone that has struggled with any of this stuff and feels alone. So after I got out of the rehab facility, I went home for a short time, and then I actually ended up running away from home permanently. I went home for a short period of time when I was about 17 years old, but that was kind of the end of living with my parents. And I just tried to keep myself alive. I tried to finish school, but I really couldn't because where I was living at the time was it was a long distance from school, and I tried to take the bus there, but I eventually just kind of gave it up. And I went back shortly when I was 17 to get my California proficiency examination, which would allow me to actually leave high school early, but I had about a year total of high school out of the entire 4 years. When I got out, I was 17 years old. I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area with absolutely no skills or direction, and I was waitressing and just doing what I could to try to survive. I got involved in the rave culture in San Francisco, and I started using a lot of drugs like ecstasy and different club drugs and that sort of thing. And it really messed my mind up even worse. I suffered from debilitating anxiety and depression just because of the ups and downs from the drugs. And by 19 years old, I was back in the same hole. I had gone to a psychiatrist that said I had started to show signs of a dissociative condition. Dissociation psychologically simply means that you're viewing reality from a different perspective, and I just felt detached from it all. I had very, very few coping mechanisms or skills. I had no self-esteem. I had no direction, and the anxiety and the depression were just absolutely debilitating to the point where I couldn't even function. So I was admitted here again at 19 for probably about a week. Got out. Shortly after that, I got married because I was just so scared of not being able to provide for myself financially. I latched on to someone that I feel in retrospect sort of saw my weaknesses and realized that I was a person that could be dominated and controlled. So I married an abusive man to try to get away from the fear of not being able to provide for myself. And this is where things really took a very, very bad turn in my life. I ended up moving down to Southern California and was completely isolated from my family. I was physically and emotionally abused for a number of years. And when I was about 23 years old, I left after a particularly bad event that happened. And I moved and with my parents. And I started going to school. I enrolled in this dental assisting college that I went to, I think it was about 18 months. And I started working as a waitress here in town. And my husband at the time, because I didn't get divorced, my husband at the time actually came down here and moved in with me and my family for a short period of time, trying to reconcile things. And I was trying to not allow the abuse that was happening for the years prior to happen in my family's home, but it was happening when my parents were gone, and it was just extremely hard for me. I was very dedicated to keeping my word about staying in the marriage, and at the time I just didn't know what else to do. So I allowed him to stay there with us, and he got a job in town, but when he realized that he couldn't just treat me in the same way that he had been in the past, he left. And we had 2 dogs together, and he took one of the dogs and he moved back to Southern California. And I don't know what it was about this experience, but it just broke me. I felt like just no good was happening. Like everything about my life seemed to be painful. Everything about my life seemed to be scary, and just there was no positive, there was no benefit, there was no advantage, there was no safety, there was no softness, there was no compassion or nurturing. And I just was absolutely beyond a doubt tired. I was 23 years old. I didn't ever feel loved. I didn't ever feel provided for. I didn't know how to self-care. I didn't know how to provide myself with love. And the world just seemed so unbelievably harsh. I just had it. I couldn't deal anymore. I just absolutely could not deal. So I experienced this thing where I just froze, like literally my body. I couldn't move my body, and I could barely get out of bed. I felt like breathing was a labor. It would take everything in my power to get up and get in the shower and get myself out of the shower. And I just thought, I don't know how I can possibly live like this. I don't know how I can go on. And I started really, really contemplating suicide. Like I could not see a light at the end of the tunnel. I could not see joy. I could not see anything worth living for. I mean, that's really it. I was a broken human being in every sense of the term. And on top of it, I had a husband back in Los Angeles that was threatening me if I didn't come back, and I was just terrified. I mean, my parents started to show up for me, especially my mom, but still I felt alone, and I felt like I just didn't see a way out. I did not see a way out. So I was talking to a therapist over the phone that I had gotten when I lived in the Bay Area, and she told me that I needed to drive myself over to the hospital and check myself in, or she was going to call them and have an ambulance sent out to the house. So I came here and I admitted myself, and I stayed for I think that was the longest time. I think I stayed here for 2 weeks. And when I got out, my parents couldn't pick me up because they were at work. And I remember walking out the front doors with my discharge papers and going and sitting at the bus stop waiting to take the bus back to my parents' house. And I remember just thinking, I gotta figure something out. I've got to figure something out. I simply cannot continue to go on like this, and coming back here is no longer an option. I have to figure something out. And from that point, 23, I mean, I'd like to say that I started to turn it around, but it really wasn't for another 12 years. I mean, another 12 years I struggled, and I'll get into some of those struggles that came after that time. But I ended up moving back to Los Angeles, and the husband became even more violent and more controlling, and it blew up finally one night, and I had had enough. And I called the police and filed a restraining order for the first time, and we agreed to get a divorce. And from that moment on was when I started to understand that I needed to do something to help myself, and that's when I got involved in what was to be the first business that I had, my jewelry business that I've had for 15 plus years now. But I want anyone that, first of all, there's a ton of stigma around depression and debilitating anxiety to the point where you have to be hospitalized, and being hospitalized, having that stigma on you, not being able, I mean, nobody's talking about this shit, right? When I was in this hospital, there were people in there with me that were like me, that were sane people that were just being weighed down by life, and people that didn't have tools to cope, and they would break, they would shatter, and they would end up here. And, you know, I think back about all those people and I wonder where they are now, and I hope that they found what they need, what they needed to pick up the pieces. But the reason that I'm doing this today is for anyone that has suffered from depression, for anyone that's suffered from despair, or feeling like there isn't enough to grab onto, there isn't enough that's worthwhile. Anybody that's struggling to pick up the pieces, anybody that's embarrassed, you know, about ending up in a place like this. It's really hard for me to come and talk about this because it's fucking embarrassing, right? To be in such a position in life where you have nothing, to the point where you need to sleep in a bed where people come in and check on you and take your shoelaces from you to make sure that you don't try to hang yourself with your fucking shoelaces. I mean, that's some bottom of the barrel shit, right? I mean, that's like, we don't want people to know that we've been to that place, or we're at that place, or we may be going to that place. So I want everyone that is struggling right now with this having been a past reality, this being something that is weighing your mind down, or maybe you're still feeling the reverberation of what going to this place, what this does to you over an extended period of time. I know for me, there were a lot of years after my last stay here that anytime I would start to feel depressed, I would think, oh, I'm going to have to go back. I always felt like it was something just like my trailer park life, that it was something that was behind me and something that was chasing me, and I was constantly striving to get away. And now, obviously, I'm in a position where I can tell people, and this is where my advantage comes from, I can tell people there's a way out, right? You can do this. If I could do this, you could do this. I was here 3 times. I was here 3 times where I was convinced that my life was worthless, meaningless, had no value, and it should be over. And now I'm in a position to say, I was here and I have taken it to the other side. See the advantage in going to a place like this, knowing that this sector of reality is an extreme one. Your mind can go there if the conditions are right and your thought quality all just sort of creates this perfect storm and you end up here. But now I can say that I'm in the opposite place, right? Now my life is pure meaning. I have love in my heart. I have connection to people. I have the ability to see the advantage. I have the ability to see life from an entirely different viewpoint or perspective. And this is the message that I want to relay to people, that if I can do this, if I can venture from that side of reality to this side, I want you to know that it's a possibility and you can do that as well. And I had a lot of struggles from the time I left here until 35 years old when I eventually found Reality Transurfing. But I'll tell you what, when I drive into this parking lot, when I drive past this place, because my sister actually lives around the corner and I drive past it when I go to her house, when I drive past this place, I laugh. And I'm just in awe because I can't believe that I have ventured from one spectrum to the other in such a dramatic sense, and that I'm in the position that I'm in now, that I can help anyone that has been here, is currently here, or feels like this is someplace they're headed. It doesn't have to be that way. And if it does, it's okay. You can go here and you can seek whatever shelter or whatever help you need. And then afterwards you can come out and you can start building a new reality for yourself, a new perspective. So I just want everyone to know, I'm 40 years old now. Again, I was here 14, 19, and 23. And I would say the biggest struggle that I have looking back on my life and looking back on my past is the thing that I view as most tragic is that I felt so unbelievably alone. You know, like I really felt so alone. I felt so by myself in my struggles. I felt so desperate for just human connection, or to know that I wasn't alone, you know. And this is why I'm doing this now. This isn't fucking easy to talk about this stuff. It really isn't. And I'm doing this because I want whoever out there, if it's just one single person, to know that you aren't alone. And there's something here now that can help you if you want help. You have a set of tools and concepts in Reality Transurfing that will help you pick up the pieces if you need to pick up the pieces right now. So I'm trying to not get so emotional on this one, but I feel for the person that is challenged by their solitude. And I'm here. I'm going to continue. I'm going to tell a little bit more about my story and how I found myself to the place I currently am. And the reason that I'm returning to these spots is because I have to be able to drum up the feelings and the memories and all this past stuff, the association. I can't just do this from the track that that I'm on. I couldn't just do this from home because I'm so far removed at this point. My perspective has changed so much. So I literally, with my last video and this video, I literally have to put myself back in this position, in this physical location, to be able to travel back to this mindset, because I'll be honest, I can barely even remember it from the track that I'm now at. So I want anyone out there to know that, one, you're not alone. Transurfing is going to help you, and don't fear or don't feel bad from the stigma attached to coming to a place like this. I know it's challenging, but I want to break this open a little bit and allow people that may be suffering from any of this stuff to talk openly about it, even if it's just on this video in the comment thread or at ITI. So I'm going to wrap this one up because I could really go on for a while about what it was like to be here on the 3 different occasions and what it's like to evolve up out of it. But there are higher tracks that exist. I promise everyone that's struggling to see that. Now there are higher tracks that exist, and just continue to keep connecting with that higher version of you and climbing up out of that hole and reality transurfing your way to another track where you can return back to a place like this and just laugh, because it is amazing it is amazing the polarity of life, or how polarizing life can be, really. But if you have any questions for me, I'm more than willing to try to answer and tell your story. And if any of you have a story that you would like to tell on the next episode of Exposed, I urge you, it might help you, it might help others, reach out to me, Renee at transurfing.us or Matthew at transurfing.us, and we will help you to tell your story and get it out there if you feel that that might be therapeutic for you and possibly help someone else. This is a cathartic experience. I'm happy I'm doing it. It's challenging to do, but fuck, is it worth it? So keep on fighting the good fight, everybody, and let me know your thoughts. Bye.